नमः श्रीयतिराजाय विवेकानन्दसूरये सच्चित्सुखस्वरूपाय स्वामिने तापहारिणे. This is the second talk on the topic stress management the Vivekananda way. In the last talk, we analyzed Swamiji's definition of life, where he says life is the unfoldment and development of a being under circumstances tending to press it down. We try to see what is unfoldment and what is development. Now we'll see how to understand circumstances tending to press it down and how to handle it. Swamiji says life is a continuous complex struggle. Circumstances will press us down, and this pressing down is an essential condition for the manifestation of life. Circumstances pressing us down means an opposing force, an obstacle, a hurdle. Now these obstacles will be in two forms. One is external. It can come from people around us. It can come from nature, from situations, unfavorable situations. It can be lack of money or anything like that. And second, it can come from inside. It can be internal. Our own physical and mental conditions and the level of our self-identity. So circumstances pressing us down are both external and internal. This circumstances pressing us down is what we call stress. It is a necessary condition for the development of life, and in that sense, it is positive. There is nothing negative about it. In psychology, they call it eustress, where the challenge and my capacity or capabilities are matching. When the challenge goes beyond my capacity, they say it results in what they call distress. That is a psychological way of seeing it. We are going through Swamiji's definition and understanding of life. Unfoldment and development of a being under circumstances tending to press it down. Now, when will these circumstances pressing me down become a negative stress? There are two reasons. First, it will be a wrong approach to life where we try to escape even from these beneficial pressing us down. We try to escape from it. Then it becomes a negative stress. Second, our unethical and undisciplined pursuit of pleasures, possessions, name and fame, and power. This also will create negative stress. It is moral negative stress. So when we talk about stress management, it is primarily managing this negative stress. Positive stress is useful and necessary. Negative stress is not really necessary. It is an aberration. Two reasons: a wrong approach, a wrong attitude towards life. Second, undisciplined pursuit of sense pleasures, possessions, name and fame and power. Now these circumstances tending to press us down, we can see in four ways. Our attitude can be, I see it as a problem or difficulty, or I can see it as a challenge and an opportunity. If I want to succeed in managing the stress, I should opt for the second one, seeing those circumstances as a challenge or even better as an opportunity. If we fail and we look upon those circumstances as problems or difficulties, whether it is born of a wrong attitude or because of my own weakness, moral weakness, then what will happen? We will be frustrated, we will be confused, will be filled with fear, anger, and finally we succumb to depression. We become stuck in life, and this will create an imbalance at the physical level, mental level, and even in our social life. So having said this, let us now see how to appreciate or accept these circumstances tending to press me down as a challenge or as an opportunity. Seeing means perception. Perceiving our thoughts, our feelings, our desires, and then perceiving this world. Now this seeing and this interpreting of the world, we do it through our ego or self-identity and through our mind. Two things we use for seeing this world, for seeing ourselves. One is the ego, my self-identity. Second is my mind. So stress management in a sense means ego management and mind management. What do you mean by seeing through ego? Seeing through ego means my self-identity, whatever I think I am, that colors my perception of my life and this world and all my interactions with this universe. If my strong basic identity is that I belong to this religion, I am a high caste man, I am a powerful man, I am a rich man, or I am a victim of circumstances, discrimination, I am an ugly man, I am a failure, whatever is my strong identity, I think this is what I am. That identity will color whatever I see and affect all my interactions, because they will be done through the prism of this caste, this power, this wealth and other identities that I have. It will distort my perception, and my approach to circumstances will become negative, and it will create negative stress. Sri Ramakrishna calls such an ego as kacha ami or unripe ego. It makes a big issue out of small things, it suffers and also makes others suffer. So ego management means seeking and discovering the higher dimensions of my identity, my I consciousness. Who am I? I have to function from the deeper levels of my personality. I have to transform the unripe ego into paka ami or ripe ego. How to do this? Swami Vivekananda suggests two ways. First, give your ego a higher, a bigger, a wider identity. Expand it until it includes all the people around you. Their joys, their fears, their sorrows, their goals. Expand yourself to include that into your identity. Then what will happen? We may say, my trouble itself is enough for me. Why should I take other people's trouble? It will not happen like that. When we expand our sense of identity to include people around us, then our troubles will become less troublesome. Second, the second way to manage the ego, make it pakami or ripe ego, is to go deeper and deeper into our own personality and try to discover our basic identity. My fundamental identity as spirit or consciousness, we call it Atman. Now both these attempts should go together. But this is a very deep topic, we will not go into that. We will understand how to achieve mind management. Mind management means managing our thoughts, managing our feelings born of thoughts, and managing our actions arising out of these thoughts and feelings. Swamiji repeatedly tells us everything is in the mind. If we learn how to keep our mind positive, We will see this life as a challenge, as an opportunity, and we will not have any negative stress. Now, what is this challenge or opportunity mindset? Let us see through an example. On 10th December 1914, Thomas Alva Edison, one of the greatest inventors, his manufacturing and experimental factory in America caught fire, and 10 buildings, more than half his factory, started burning. It was a chemical fire. It started in the evening. Fire tenders came, people came, but it was a blazing fire. And 10 buildings, almost half his factory, was burning. It was a huge blaze. Edison's son also was standing there, sad, watching his father's hard work of so many years going up in flames, all the precious records also being burned. At that moment, Edison came to him and told him, "Son, go and call your mother and all her friends. Let them come and watch this fire. They will never see a fire like this again." His son is shocked. "What do you mean? It is a tragedy. We are losing everything here. And you want mother to come and watch this? See this fire?" Then Edison says, "It's all right. We have just got rid of a lot of rubbish. Go, bring your mother. Let us see this fire." In that moment of tragedy, he is also aware that this is a huge fire and nobody can make such a big fire. 10 buildings burning, and some of those buildings were newly constructed. So where will they see such a fire? It's an opportunity. So let her come with her friends and watch this fire. Anyhow, it is burning. By morning, the whole thing is burnt to ashes. First thing Thomas Alva Edison did was he started planning how to reconstruct the factory. Immediately, the next day itself, he sent his people to his friend Henry Ford, and he took a loan from him. His loss was estimated around $7 million. He went, got that loan, he rebuilt the factory, and within 3 weeks, the factory was rebuilt. And that year, he and his team, they worked overtime, and their profit was much more than their loss. The circumstance was very stressful. Half his factory is burned. His records, his experiments are all burned to ashes. Certainly, Edison would have felt that stress. But he managed it because he trained himself to see opposing circumstances as a challenge, as an opportunity. The circumstances, sudden circumstance, unexpected fire, pressing him down. Even in that moment, he is seeing an opportunity to appreciate the fire. He wants his wife and her friends to see that. It is a challenge. The very next day, he could have sat and mopped and cried, cursed God. No. First thing in the morning, he called his people together and he told, "We will rebuild this factory." And he sent his manager or someone, go to Henry Ford, ask for loan. In 3 weeks, factory was almost rebuilt. That is seeing circumstances tending to press me down as a challenge, as an opportunity. Wonderful example. Now, to understand, appreciate and tackle these obstacles in life, which are actually doors for our higher development, we have to train our mind, like Thomas Alva Edison had trained, to see opportunities and challenges in these opposing circumstances. How to do it? Let us see some practices which Swami Vivekananda prescribes for us. The first one is to have an ideal in life. Swamiji repeatedly tells us, have an ideal in life. I quote Swami Vivekananda. Unfortunately, in this life, the vast majority of persons are groping through this dark life without any ideal at all. If a man with an ideal makes 1,000 mistakes, I am sure that the man without an ideal makes 50,000. Therefore, it is better to have an ideal. And this ideal we must hear about as much as we can, till it enters into our hearts, into our brains, into our very veins, until it tingles in every drop of our blood and permeates every pore in our body. We must meditate upon it. Unquote. Ideal gives a purpose to our life. It gives a direction to our life. It will also help us to determine the means to achieve the goals in our life. Now, a clear understanding of our ideal and the means will help us to respond to these opposing circumstances in a positive manner. In fact, life is full of choices. Every moment we have a choice. But unfortunately, most of us, we go through life on an autopilot mode. So we are unaware of this great boon called choice. We have a choice about what we think, what we feel, what we speak, what we do, how we respond to people, how we respond to circumstances. In everything we have a choice. But to recognize this choice and then to act upon them consistently in a way that it will take us towards our goal, we need strength, especially willpower. This is the second thing Swamiji is teaching us. Develop strength. First is have an ideal. Ideal will give you the power to discriminate and know how to make your choices, make the correct choices, which here will mean look upon these opposing circumstances as opportunities, as challenges, and make the correct choices. Edison could not have made that choice at that moment to see an opportunity and to see a challenge if he had not trained his mind. An untrained mind would not have been able to do that. So you cannot train your mind. It's like you cannot go into a battle if you have not prepared for it for years together. So life is a continuous complex challenge. Suddenly big challenges will come. To face that, I should be ready. That readiness, first step is have an ideal. Ideal means what is the purpose of my life? What is it that I want to achieve? And that I will achieve through dharma. And that ideal will give me the power to discriminate, to recognize the choices and make the right choices. To make the right choices means I need strength. That is the second thing, develop strength. I quote Swamiji again. This is the great fact. Strength is life, weakness is death. Strength is felicity, life eternal, immortal. Weakness is constant strain and misery. Weakness is death. Never be weak. You must be strong. You have infinite strength within you. Unquote. You have infinite strength within you. Now, how to manifest this strength within me? Self-discipline. There is strength inside me. I don't have to get it from anywhere outside. The strength is there inside. I have to develop it, manifest it. How to do that? Self-discipline is the word. Strength will come when we can control our senses. Strength will come when we can control our greed. Strength will come when we can control time. What do we mean by controlling senses? If we don't have control over senses, our life will become restless and stressful. We can enjoy pleasures, but it should be according to dharma. Especially senses, among senses, the tongue. We have to control the tongue. Let us see what Swamiji says. I quote Swamiji. What is the world but a combination of stomach and sex? Look at millions of men and women. That is what they are living for. Take these away from them and they will find their life empty, meaningless, and intolerable. Such are we, and such is our mind. It is continually hankering for ways and means to satisfy the hunger of the stomach and sex. All the time this is going on. There is also endless suffering. These desires of the body bring only momentary satisfaction and endless suffering. It is like drinking a cup of which the surface layer is nectar, while underneath all is poison. But we still hanker for all these things. Unquote. Bondage to senses is misery, continuous stress. For example, smoking or drinking. The second one is overcoming greed. Self-control of the senses, then self-control of the mind, especially greed. Greed for possessing things has to be controlled because it is a never-ending hankering. There is a very good story, parable, Sri Ramakrishna used to tell this. The king's barber, one day while returning home, he heard an ethereal voice which asked him, "Do you want 7 jars of gold?" The barber was stunned. Who would not want? He said, "Okay, I want it." Then the voice said, "Okay, go home and see." He rushed home. It is a small hut. When he went there, his wife is excited and she told, out of nowhere 7 jars have manifested here. They opened the jars and every jar is filled with gold, rubies, emeralds, diamonds, jewels. The 7th jar, when they opened, their heart sank because it was only half full. Now they both are very sad. How could that voice cheat us like this? It said 7 jars. There are only 6.5 jars. So they made a choice. They said, now it is our duty to fill up this 7th jar. They are already poor, but they started saving their money, converting it into gold and trying to fill up the jar. In this process, the barber became tense, very stressed. The king saw, my barber seems to be stressed. Maybe financial problem. So he told the minister, increase his pay, make it double. Barber has to be happy for the king to have a good shave. After some weeks, he sees the barber is still stressed, more stressed in fact. Then the king understood and he asked, "Hey, you fellow, have you got those 7 jars of gold?" The barber is stunned. "Your Highness, how did you know?" Because if you find anything in the earth, it belongs to the king. And now the king knows it. Then the king tells him, "You fool, they are magical jars." That voice which asked you, that yaksha or the demon, whoever it is, they offered it to me also. Do you want 7 jars of gold? Then I asked a question. Can I use those jewels? Can I spend them? And next moment that voice and those jars vanished. That is to say, they can never be used. It is a magical jar. You can never fill up the 7th jar. Even if I put my whole treasury into it, that 7th jar will not be filled and you have been trying to fill it. Stop being a fool. Go and give it back. This is a lesson for us. If I want to manage my stress, negative stress, I have to control my greed for possessions. I should be happy. It doesn't mean I will not be eager to achieve prosperity. There is a difference between greed and legitimate desire for prosperity. That we have to find out. What happens in life? There are 2 ways in which we can see life. One is the horizontal view of life. Another is the vertical view of life. We can understand this through an example. The son came home and told his father, "Papa, I have scored 85 in my exams." The father says, "What? You scored 85 out of 100? Look at that neighbor's son. He has scored 95. And I sent you to 2 tuitions. I spent so much money on your tuitions and still only 85? And the neighbor's son has scored 95? Now the son is sad. Same situation. The father comes home and tells this. The son comes home and tells the father, "Father, I have scored 85. And in the second situation, this father says, "What? 85? In the previous exam, you had scored 80. I knew you would do well. You are my son. You have improved. And I am confident next exam you will touch 90 or 95. Come, let us celebrate." Now, what a big difference. The first father adopted what we call horizontal view of life, where we compare ourselves with others. Even now parents make this mistake. They train us to do this. Compare yourself with others continuously. I have a Maruti car, he has a Benz car. I have a 2-bedroom flat, he has a 4-bedroom flat. I have these many jewels, she has those many more jewels. Continuously comparing. I got this position, he's got that position. My salary is this much, his salary is that much, more or less. So my happiness or my disappointment stems from this comparison. This is called horizontal view of life. Vertical view of life is what the second father adopted. He compared the boy with his own previous performance in the exam. Each one of us, we are unique. Why should my son be compared with the neighbor's son? The correct way is to compare him with his own previous performance. So the second father's approach is the correct approach for manifesting the potentials in his son. You have done that, you have improved, next exam you can improve, you can do better. That will give all the confidence to the second boy. He may not even need any tuitions because he says, "My father believes in me," and that will give him his own self-belief. The horizontal view of life fosters competition, intense cutthroat competition. If you enter into that intense cutthroat competition, you will have stress. Telling, "How will I overcome stress? I want to be in the competition, but I don't want stress," is foolish. It is like eating a chili and telling, "I don't want to feel the the hot thing on my tongue. My tongue is burning. I don't want to feel that burning sensation, but I want to eat chilies." If you eat chilies, your tongue will burn. If you are going to compete with every people around you, you will continuously have stress, a negative stress. If you take the other one, I will compete with myself. The vertical view of life teaches that. It doesn't tell you don't compete. Yes, compete with yourself. So what about the people around me? Cooperate with them. An ideal society is that where each one of us, we compete with ourselves, we cooperate with others. That will bring a positive dimension to life. It will help each one of us to unfold our potential. Compete with yourself, cooperate with others. But this consumerist society, it continuously tells us, compete with others. Owner's pride, neighbor's envy. An advertisement tells that. So if you take this car, your neighbors will be envious of you. Your standard is more. Your status goes up. Just buy our product, then you will be more. Something more than what you are. It adds value to you. This is what consumerist society says. If you accept it, you will have to accept stress, and don't talk about stress management. Suffer. If you say, I don't want to have this stress, but I want to excel, yes, you will compete, you will excel, not in comparison with others. I will excel, I will score 95, I will score 100. Why should it trouble me if my friend also scores 95 and 100? Let all of us do well. Then who will get that top job? Practically, not all will get 100 out of 100. It's not possible. I may score 100 in English. You may score 100 in mathematics. Let it be. And this world is large, huge. You don't have to see the value of life only through power or money. Because power and money does not give the deepest fulfillment. So we have to control this greed to compete with others, which manifests as the greed to possess things, to acquire more power, to have more name and fame. That greed. First is the desire to enjoy through the senses. That desire has to be controlled, self-restraint. Second is to control this desire called greed. Sri Ramakrishna would put it as Kamini Kanchana, desire in the form of lust and greed. Another thing in self-control is controlling time. Controlling time means controlling life. Now these last 30 minutes is our life. We have spent 30 minutes of our life. Life has a fixed time shelf for us. We don't know when it is going to end, but there is a time frame when it will end one day. It may be 70, 80, 90, maximum maybe 100. It will end. In those years, 30 minutes we have spent now. So time is equal to life. To control life, I have to learn how to control time. How do I do that? By leading an organized life, by following a strict daily routine, where I have fixed time for every activity. Not just the time, but the amount of time also is fixed. This is very simple on the face surface, but very difficult to practice. But if we do that, we will have control over time, which is control over life. Sense control, then control of the greed, and third, controlling time. By having a daily schedule and sticking to it. This will give me strength. All these three, self-restraint in the senses, self-restraint in greed, and control over time. These will help me to develop the strength, the power of will, which will give me the strength to act wisely, choose wisely. Every moment of life we have choices. So we have to see those choices and make the correct choices. Some of us see, but we fail to make the right choice, though we know what it is. That is because the will is weak. Now if we practice this, the willpower will become strong. We'll be able to overcome our temptations. And we will also develop the power to control our imagination. Imagination is more powerful than willpower, they say. So I have to train my mind, control my thoughts. How do I do that? Practice these three. Control your senses, control your greed, control time. All this will give you that necessary strength which is inside you. It will awaken that strength. Third point, third practice, develop a contributor attitude in every work. We all do work, but our attitudes are not same. If I want to have control over life, if I want to have strength, if I want to see these circumstances pressing me down as a challenge or as an opportunity, then one of the things I have to do is See my work, whatever it may be, every action, see it as a contribution to the bigger picture. Contribution to my family, contribution to my organization, contribution to my institute, contribution to my society, contribution to mankind, contribution to this world, universe, nature. Whatever I do, I try to see it as a contribution for the good of someone else, not just my good plus the good of others. The more the number of others, the greater is the contribution strength. I quote Swamiji, all outgoing energy following a selfish motive is frittered away. It will not cause power to return to you, but if restrained, it will result in development of power. This self-control will tend to produce a mighty will, a character which makes a Christ or a Buddha. So unselfishness is more paying. Only we don't have patience, Swamiji says. When I am performing an action as a contribution, it is unselfishness. One of Swamiji's wonderful definitions of God is like this: unselfishness is God. What does he mean? The moment we become unselfish, the inner divinity starts manifesting. In the previous talk, we saw how the water is coming down, flowing down into the field, and there is a gate obstructing it. If you remove that gate, the water will flow down, removing all the dust and stones, whatever is there, flowing over it. These dust and stones are these obstructions, circumstances pressing us down. They will all be washed away. How? When the inner power starts flowing, manifesting. What is that opening of the gate? It is developing these instruments, fine-tuning the instruments, making them perfect. Mind, ego, these instruments, because these are the instruments through which life is unfolding. The more I make it perfect, the greater is the inner power manifesting. And one way, definite way to achieve that perfection, perfecting the instrument, is developing this attitude of a contributor. I will contribute. Why are you studying? I want to contribute. Why are you doing this work? It is my contribution for this. Contribution should not be seen as giving money. Contribution is my energy manifesting in a way which is good for this world. I will be seeking excellence in work. That is my contribution. Why are you seeking excellence? So that I get a certificate, everyone praise me. No. I am seeking excellence so that this product or this work will benefit others. And others will be able to emulate and benefit. So whatever I am doing, same thing can be done for a selfish purpose or an unselfish purpose. We have to struggle to keep this attitude in mind. It is for the good of everyone. Bahujana hitaya, bahujana sukhaya. It looks very simple, but it makes a huge difference. The same work with two different attitudes, the results will be two different things. The attitude I need is to see my work as a contribution. When I have that spirit of contribution, Swamiji says, it will produce a mighty will, and that will develop a character. A character which says, Swamiji says, which is as big as that of a Christ or a Buddha. So this is the third practice. Fourth one, be truthful. Be truthful. Every scripture tells us this, be truthful. In one word, Sri Ramakrishna puts it across as Mon Mukh Ek Kora, unifying your thought, your speech and your action. In scriptures, this is called Trikarana Shuddhi. Your three instruments, your mind, your speech and your body, hands and other things, they become one. Your speech, your thoughts, your actions, they become one. What you think, you speak, and what you speak, you act according to it. Sri Ramakrishna was very particular about this. Every spiritual Aspirant has to be careful. Even anyone who wants to have any development in his life should give tremendous attention to this. I will be truthful. Swamiji says, strength is in goodness, in purity. And honesty or truthfulness is the foundation of goodness and purity. Swami Turiyananji, one of the direct disciples of Sri Ramakrishna, he advises us, in matters of principle, be firm like a rock, and in matters of opinion, flow with the tide. In matters of principle, be firm like a rock, and in matters of opinion, flow with the tide. So we should know this difference between principles and opinions. Once I have fixed my ideal, I will know what are my principles. In those principles, firm as a rock, there is no compromise. My friend will leave me, I will lose this job, or I will lose that extra something I will get. Let it go. Because if I lose truth, I lose everything. So I hold on to that. Principles are more important than all other material benefits. If it is an opinion, then flow with the opinion. If someone says, this color is beautiful, this wall color is beautiful, and you think it is very glaring or very harsh, you don't like it. But to maintain peace at home, you tell, yeah, in one sense it looks good. It is an opinion. It is not a matter of principle. If your friend says, what a wonderful acting, and you think it is a stupid acting, you don't have to hurt your friend. You say, maybe in one sense it's good also. Yeah, in a way it may be good. It is an opinion. It is not a principle. Many times, unnecessary quarrels happen because of opinions. Both of them don't have any idea of what are principles. They are not even discussing principles, simply opinion, and about some third person, about a film actor, about a politician. They start quarreling and come to blows. Utter foolishness. So when I am talking about practicing truthfulness, I should know this difference between principles and opinion. And when it is a matter of principle, I will be firm as a rock. And I will try to unify my thought, my speech, and my actions. This will give me the strength. This will give me that willpower. This will give me that sense of discrimination. The strength to recognize choices, make the correct choices, and see circumstances pressing me down as a challenge, as an opportunity. Fifth one is to have faith in our own divinity. Swamiji says, yes, you are the Atman. Tell this to yourself day and night. I don't understand this concept of Atman. At least try to reflect and see that you are not just this body-mind. A little withdrawing. Once in a while, withdraw from your hectic activities and try to reflect and see, who is this I who is having all this stress and difficulties? Who am I or what am I is a fundamental question. If we learn to ask this question, we will see we will become still, we will become calm, and we will sense something which is more than just thought. That comes through practice, but all the scriptures, all the saints, they tell us you are not just body and mind, and also the ego. You are not this body-mind-ego complex. You are awareness. You are consciousness. The word in our scriptures, in our culture, is Atman. Now I have to have faith in this. I need to have this faith that there is a power, intelligent power, which has created this universe, and I have to surrender. Pray. If we read Swami Vivekananda's letters, we will repeatedly come across this phrase, Mother knows what is best. Mother knows what is best. He is referring to Divine Mother, Kali. Repeatedly in his letters, he says, let it be as mother wills. I quote Swamiji, he says, I am a man who frets much. I am a man who frets much, but waits all the same. I'll put all my efforts, strain myself and give my best. Then I also wait. What do I wait for? Because I know it is finally the divine will which will help me to manifest whatever it is that I am trying to achieve. It is my self-effort, my Purushartha plus divine grace that will see me manifest all the potentials that I can as a human being. I have to have this faith in myself, in my divinity. Because there are other ways, outside in ways, which we discussed in the last class, of trying to overcome stress. Where you say, if you get such and such a situation, then handle it like this. Treat that fellow like that. Do this technique, do that technique. It is all outside in approach. The inside out approach is, I change myself. I who am experiencing this stress. Let me change that I. That I is suffering for so many reasons. First is undisciplined pursuit of sense pleasures, greed, name, fame, power, and over involvement in things without taking a break. It is called cumulative stress. All this will torture that I. So one way is go and discover that I. And then you will suddenly find that the I is unripe I, that ego, unripe ego, that requires a little uplifting. Giving attention itself will break away that connection, wrong connections. A little self-reflection it is called. So this can be practiced with a little bit of spiritual reading and especially the thoughts of Sri Ramakrishna, Holy Mother Sri Sharada Devi and Swami Vivekananda. It is the essence of Vedanta presented in the simplest of terms for this modern day. If we read that, we will learn how to reflect on ourselves. So to overcome stress, manage it, in Swami Vivekananda's light, in the light of his teachings, we have shared some thoughts. Please remember this definition of life. Life is the unfoldment and development of a being under circumstances tending to press it down. Whenever you think your stress is increasing, you are overstressed, just understand circumstances are tending to press me down. Immediately see, how are you accepting it? Are you seeing it as a problem or a difficulty? Unknowingly, you may be seeing it as problem or difficulty. Just question, how am I seeing this? If you find I am seeing it as a problem, I am being a weak lamb, sacrificing myself. Circumstances, outside circumstances we suffer, but largely it is our own inner things, weaknesses which make us suffer. Especially those who have ideals in life, but they are unable to match. Their actions are not matching with those ideals, they have a lot of stress. So you see that, and if you say, oh, I am seeing this as a problem or a difficulty, and I am not even struggling, I am simply suffering, then I am going into depression. If this is the case, then immediately we say, no, I will take this as a challenge. Don't say immediately opportunity, say, I'll take this as a challenge. What does it mean to see that as a challenge? It means to question. It means to have deeper reflection. It means to say, now how will I manifest my potential using this? Every obstacle is an opportunity. It makes me strong, but I should know how to hold that opportunity. That obstacle will become an opportunity if I learn how to hold it. If I hold the wrong end, I will end up as a failure. If I learn how I will handle this properly, then it will become an opportunity for manifesting my potential. That will require strength, mental strength. So some 5 practices we have seen. Have an ideal first. First have clarity in that, work it out. Then develop the strength to hold on to that ideal and working it and the realities. That strength will come by controlling your senses, your greed, and by controlling your time. Then develop this spirit of contributor. Whatever work you are doing, it is a contribution. That will bring unselfishness. Unselfishness makes your mind pure. Willpower becomes more strong. Character is built. Then be truthful. Be honest in all your endeavors. Try to make your inner thing truthful. Your thought, your speech, and your actions. Make that truthful first. Then have faith in God, faith in your divinity. These are some ways in which we can control stress. Stress is positive and negative. Positive stress, we require it. It is part of life. Life means circumstances tending to press me down. I cannot escape it. I don't have to escape it. It's an opportunity for me to manifest, to unfold, to develop. Let me accept it. It is my wrong choices which makes life stressful for me in the negative way. Without my wrong choices, wrong ideas, wrong attitudes, wrong approach to life, life's stress is positive only. I have made it negative because I have accepted wrong ideas. I have to just give them up. And how will I do that? I'll develop these capacities. So let us reflect on these things and struggle. Swami Vivekananda says, take up 5 ideas and make them your own. You will be more learned than a man who has by-hearted the whole library. We have just discussed 5 ideas, which will help us to handle these circumstances as a challenge, as an opportunity. Remember these words, challenge and opportunity. Either it is facing an exam, facing an interview, or your family problems, whatever it is, you have a disturbed relationship with someone. Reflect and see. It is because of your mismanagement of your mind and your ego. Ego and mind contribute to everything. It is through these instruments we understand and interact with this world. I have to fine-tune and make these 2 instruments perfect. Some practices we have seen, let us practice them. Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu.